All right, Georgia and Vanderbilt getting ready for a homecoming Saturday in Athens. Make sure you're going to Red Zone. They're going to want to see you. They're over on Clayton Street. They will be open before the game. Get all the gear that you need. Our friends at Red Zone. Hey, look, Vanderbilt's going to have a hard time with this game, and that's just all there is to it. They're not really exceptional at any one thing. As we watched them, I mean, you look at their first game of the season, they scored a pile of points against Hawaii, and then they scored all against Vanderbilt. Excuse me, against Alabama. So this is a Vanderbilt team that is going to have a really hard time against Georgia coming in and getting the job done. Kirby's teams have covered against Vanderbilt every game since 2016, which was an upset loss. A 14-point Georgia favorite lost that game. Now, Vandy did show signs of life last week against the Rebels, so that's a curious thing to kind of watch. I don't know. I mean, 52-28, had that game not been tied at the half, I do wonder if people would have paid attention to it, but I don't know. So they're struggling. If struggling might not be the greatest word. They're not great passing the ball, and we know that against Georgia, it's hard to really run. But this Vanderbilt team is putting up about 33 points a game. A lot of that came against Hawaii and Elon. Um, but I think their real problem is they're allowing five touchdowns a game, and against Georgia that could really go a lot higher. Not good at all. They're also um, allowing they're not great on a third down conversion offensively, and they are not very good in terms of uh, first downs defensively either. So that they're not a great team, and we know this. This is something we see a lot. They're allowing almost 480 yards a game. I mean, Georgia, it is not. I don't think out of the question to put up 650 yards. Georgia is leading the country. Well, they're not leading the country. They are number four in the country behind Tennessee by about 30 yards. They're the number four total offense with 520. So I don't think it's out of the question for Georgia to have 620 yards. Excuse me, 650 yards. I don't think that's out of the question at all. I do wonder if we're seeing a very different Georgia team start to emerge before the stretch run of this season. Does this run game starting to kick in? I mean, they're 12th in the country in passing with 320 yards a game. They're averaging 200 yards on the ground, and they really haven't been great on the ground. I mean, is that something that we're going to start seeing them really just efficient at? They're barely allowing 260 yards on defense. There's just not a lot of margin for error on this for this Georgia team. They're allowing 11 points a game. I don't think I don't excuse me. I don't think Vanderbilt's scoring 11 points. Alabama looked good against Vandy. We're going to see if Georgia looks good when they play Vandy. You know what looks good? DAWGSTRUCTION on your mantle. You see it right behind me? It's right there. Pick it up today. You're going to get a Red Zone T-shirt. If you email me, I will send it to you right away. A season ago, this Vanderbilt game. Okay, so let me set the stage for you. This Vanderbilt game a year ago, after the first quarter, I was pretty convinced Georgia could win the national championship, if not should. And you say, well, the Vanderbilt game, Well, look, I think they were up 35-0 after the first quarter, and the offense looked sick. Sick. The Dogs scored on all five possessions of the first quarter, going up 35-0 in what felt like mere minutes. JT Daniels, 9 of 10 for 129 yards, two touchdown throws, but his handoff to Ladd McConkey for a 24-yard touchdown to put the Dogs up by 5 scores was the last significant snap of the season Daniels would take. That's when Stetson Bennett, the mailman, as many of you call him, stepped to the forefront and took the season over. I don't know if he played better than JT. No one played better than JT against Vanderbilt. I mean, that was, but there was something that Stetson Bennett um, had that JT didn't, and that was run game. I think that was run game. Number one. Number two, he may have had the hearts of the kids on the team too. Nolan Smith was a big Stetson believer. And of course, you didn't have George Pickens at the time. You had the receivers that they had. A.D. Mitchell was coming into his own. But that 7 days in October, well, it was September to October, I believe. That was, yeah, September going into October. That was the pivotal moment of the season for Georgia. Okay, so people say, well, it's the Vanderbilt game, and then they slammed Arkansas. That's right. I mean, it doesn't, like, what Georgia beat Clemson. Like, what happened in that game where people were like, oh, this is it? No, we didn't know that then. What happened in the South Carolina game besides Stetson throwing a pick and Georgia kind of being sloppy on offense in the first half? There was no certain thing. The first 20 minutes of that game weren't great. The last 5 minutes of that half were, but it was that 7 days of the fall that gave birth to Stetson being the starting quarterback. And I think the maturity, I don't know if this team could have done that. I don't know. Like, if Stetson were to get hurt and you're waiting for him to come back, would this team handle it with the maturity if Carson Beck stepped in? I don't know. Um, Stetson had already won a bunch of games for Georgia in 2020. Carson has not started in one. Carson is more gifted than the 2020 Stetson Bennett we saw, I think, and the mistakes that Stetson made. But could this team handle that? I don't know. There was never really a moment. There was a lot of panic before the Arkansas game. I can tell you with certainty that the fans were freaking the fudge out hardcore before that game. And then, going to Auburn, the way Stetson played really well against Auburn. And but that 7 days was handled well, and Stetson was ready to play. Now, it's not just Stetson Bennett, okay? It was Zamir White blocking. I don't know if Zamir blocked the punt, the kick against Arkansas, the punt. I think he did. It was the offensive line against Arkansas. It was JT Daniels and company in the first quarter against Vanderbilt. It was the suffocation of KJ Jefferson by Georgia's defense. They were that team was uh, they were built emotionally to handle it. But when I think back to the beginning of the season and talking to folks who see Georgia practice when the rest of us don't, folks who are about as inside as it gets, they their notion was that the defense would have to grow up as the season went on. Well, that's not a problem. Doesn't seem like it to me. I mean, like, they're going to have a real challenge against Mississippi State and Tennessee, but Tennessee's going to have to come to Athens and play. Now, that's not always the easiest thing to do, as we saw with Auburn. Now, Tennessee went to LSU. That was a huge win for them. Okay, but that's not going to quite be like what they're challenged with against Georgia. Now, I don't even know why I started talking about Tennessee, but they've not really had a scary road game. I mean, the LSU is pretty scary though. But I think that this program is going to have to show that it can round out and knock out the likes of Vanderbilt. That I think they will cover. Um, I think that I'm not super comfortable with that, but we make picks here, and um, I think that they will cover the line against Vanderbilt. But I want to see how they play. Alabama played pretty well against Vanderbilt. It wasn't unbelievable, but they played pretty well, I thought, and they were chunking it all over the place. I don't know if they ran so hot against Vandy, but this Georgia team can be special. And that's and I know what to look for. I've known for a long time. In 12, that team was special. They should win the national championship. In 7, you could tell. But it took 7. This team is not dissimilar from the 7 team, except they have won all their games so far. This team has a younger base of players, but they have plenty of older guys mixed in too. The 12 team was an old team, Jarvis and all those guys. That was an older team. That was much more similar to last year's Georgia team. But there's no one way to win a national championship. You can do it in different ways. Nick has shown that. Dabo Swinney's shown that. The 16 Clemson team was not like the 18 Clemson team. They had similarities with the defense and so forth. The quarterbacks weren't the same. One was a true freshman. Stetson is one of the oldest quarterbacks in college football. I want to see Georgia dominate Vanderbilt. I expect to see Georgia dominate Vanderbilt. We'll see you after the game on Saturday. Thanks for watching.